Hi everyone, I'm Julia, and I'm so happy to welcome you to another episode of the English Talk community. Whether you're out for a walk, sitting in traffic, washing the dishes, or just taking a break, I want to thank you for choosing to spend this moment with me. And I want you to know right away, this episode might just change how you see your daily English speaking practice. Yes, really. What if just 5 minutes a day could completely transform the way you speak English forever? Let's talk about that. Have you ever felt that strange gap between understanding English and speaking it? Like your brain knows exactly what the words mean, but when it's time to say something out loud, everything gets stuck. Maybe you feel nervous, maybe you pause too long, or maybe the words just won't come at all. If that sounds like you, you're not alone. In fact, you're in the right place, because we're going to talk about why that happens, and more importantly, what you can do about it. Starting today. But before we dive into today's practical tips and stories, let me ask you something. Have you ever thought about what would happen if you stopped focusing so much on being perfect and just started talking? Not long speeches, not textbook grammar, just talking, a little bit, every day. Imagine your English like a plant. You don't need to pour a bucket of water on it once a week. You just need to give it a little sunlight and a little water every day. Consistency beats intensity. That's the kind of mindset that builds fluency. And this episode is all about helping you create that habit, without pressure, without fear. And hey, if you're someone who really wants to speak English more confidently, more naturally, and more often, then go ahead and hit that like button. It helps more people around the world discover this podcast. And if you're new here or you've been listening for a while but haven't subscribed yet, now's a great time to do it. Because every episode is designed to support your journey to fluency, step by step. No pressure, no perfection, just practice, connection, and progress. So if that sounds like something you want more of, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Now, let's take a deep breath together. Seriously, inhale and exhale. I know that learning a new language, especially speaking it, can feel a little scary sometimes. You might feel like you're being judged, or that you'll make mistakes, or that you'll sound silly. But let me tell you something. Your effort is already a sign of courage. If you're listening to this podcast, it means you care. It means you're trying. And that means you're already further along than you think. My job here is to help you turn that effort into action. I've talked to so many learners from around the world. People from Rome, from Seoul, from Sao Paulo, from Lagos. People just like you, who are on this path. And no matter where they come from, there's one thing they all have in common. They want to speak English more freely, not like a textbook, not like a robot, but like a real person. Someone who can express ideas, share stories, and connect with others. At work, while traveling, online, or just for fun. And that's exactly what this episode is here to help you do. We're going to take the pressure off, we're going to take the fear out, and we're going to focus on one simple thing: speaking every day. Even if it's just for 5 minutes. Especially if it's just for 5 minutes. You don't need a teacher. You don't need a perfect accent. You just need your voice and a little bit of time. Now, I want to talk directly to the version of you who sometimes feels frustrated. The one who compares your English to other people's. The one who says, "Why can I understand everything, but I still can't speak fluently?" I want to tell you that speaking is not about knowing more. It's about using what you already know every single day. And I'll tell you a secret. Even native speakers forget words. Even advanced learners get stuck. What makes the difference is not who never makes mistakes. It's who keeps going anyway. Every single day. So, think about your daily routine for a second. What are those small moments when your mind is free? Brushing your teeth, walking your dog, cooking dinner. Those are golden opportunities. That's when you can start speaking, out loud, to yourself, to your reflection, to your pet. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you speak, because the more you speak, the more you'll speak. That's how fluency grows. And listen, I'm not here to give you 100 new rules to memorize. This isn't about grammar drills or vocabulary lists. It's about building a relationship with English. A relationship where you don't wait for permission to speak. You just do it. Because your voice matters, your ideas matter, and they deserve to be heard. In English. Now I want you to ask yourself a question. Be honest. When was the last time you spoke English just for fun? Not for work. Not for a test. Just to hear yourself think in English? If the answer is I don't remember, then I want today to be the day that changes. Not because someone told you to, not because you have a deadline, but because you're ready to start building the habit that will change everything. The habit of showing up, speaking, practicing, and giving yourself permission to grow. So let's do it together. Let's make this a space where mistakes are welcome, effort is celebrated, and speaking English becomes part of your life. Not something extra, but something real. Because when you speak a little bit every day, you stop being a learner and start being a speaker, and that's where the magic happens. Welcome to the English Talk community. I'm so glad you're here. Let's begin. I know how frustrating it can be. You've spent years learning English, maybe in school, maybe online, maybe through movies or music. You understand so much. You can read articles, follow podcasts, even enjoy entire seasons of your favorite TV shows in English. But when it comes time to speak, your mind goes blank. The words feel far away. You know them, they're in there somewhere, but they just don't come out. And suddenly you freeze. Or you speak so slowly, searching for each word, and you feel embarrassed. If this has ever happened to you, you're definitely not alone. This is one of the most common challenges I hear from English learners all around the world. It's so common, in fact, that I've started to call it the silent gap. It's that space between understanding and speaking. And the reason it happens isn't because you're not smart enough or because your English isn't good enough. It happens because speaking is a skill. Not just a language skill, but a performance skill. And like any performance skill, dancing, playing an instrument, public speaking, it needs consistent, low-pressure practice to grow. Most people try to fix this problem by studying more vocabulary or reviewing more grammar. But that's like reading about swimming instead of getting in the pool. It helps a little, but it's not enough to move your mouth and voice into action. And here's something we don't talk about enough. Fear. Fear is a big part of why people don't practice speaking every day. Fear of saying something wrong. Fear of sounding silly. Fear of being judged. I've spoken with people from Paris, Mumbai, Cairo, Berlin, Tokyo, and Nairobi, all amazing, intelligent people who tell me the same thing. I'm afraid to speak English out loud because I don't want to make a mistake. And I always say the same thing back. Mistakes are part of the journey. Everyone makes them. And honestly, no one is judging you as harshly as you're judging yourself. Let me tell you about a woman I met named Sophia from Barcelona. She told me she used to freeze every time she had to speak in English at work. She was so fluent when writing emails, but in meetings, she could barely say a full sentence. She avoided presentations and small talk. One day, after a really stressful meeting, she said to herself, "Enough." She decided to speak English every day for just 5 minutes. At first, she whispered while doing the dishes. Then she started describing what she saw out her window. Little by little, her confidence started to grow. Now she leads meetings, makes jokes in English, and even teaches some phrases to new colleagues. Not because she studied more, but because she practiced speaking without pressure. The real struggle isn't just about vocabulary or grammar, it's about mindset. Many learners still think they have to be perfect before they're allowed to speak. They wait until they feel ready. But here's the truth. That day may never come unless you start speaking now, even if you feel unsure. Fluency isn't something you study and then suddenly have. It's something you create slowly, day by day, with your own voice. Another problem is consistency. I know you're busy. We all are. Life happens, work, family, responsibilities. So we say, I'll practice speaking tomorrow, and tomorrow becomes next week, and then a month goes by. And what happens? Your confidence drops even more. But if you can find just 5 minutes a day, that changes everything. 5 minutes of speaking English out loud is more powerful than an hour of reading or grammar exercises, because it activates your muscles, your memory, your focus, and your courage. You don't need a classroom. You don't need a partner. You just need a moment, your voice, and the willingness to speak out loud. I've seen this happen over and over again. There was a man named Kenji from Osaka. He loved watching English YouTube videos and could understand almost everything. But when he went on a business trip to London, he couldn't order food at a restaurant without getting nervous. After he came back home, he committed to a daily speaking routine. Not long conversations, just 5 minutes in the morning while making coffee. He practiced saying simple things: what he planned to do that day, how he felt, what the weather was like. Slowly, his words started to flow. A few months later, on another business trip, he had a full conversation with a client over dinner. He said it was the first time he truly felt like himself in English. That's the power of speaking daily, but you won't get there unless you admit to yourself that this is a real struggle. Ignoring it won't help. Thinking that understanding is good enough won't help either. If your goal is to speak English fluently, then you have to speak. It sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest steps for many learners. And I understand that deeply. That's why in this episode, I want to help you take that step without fear. I want you to know that the struggle is real, but it's also something you can overcome. You don't need to sound like a native speaker. You don't need perfect grammar. You don't need to know every word. You just need the courage to show up and speak every day, even when you're tired, even when you don't feel ready, even when it feels a little awkward, because those are the moments that build true fluency. Now let's be honest for a moment. Have you ever promised yourself that you'd practice more but didn't follow through? Maybe you told yourself you'd speak English while walking, or talk to yourself in the mirror but then forgot or felt embarrassed. That's okay. It happens to everyone. The important thing is not to let that stop you from trying again. Your English voice is like a muscle. If you stop using it, it weakens. But if you start small and stay consistent, it gets stronger. And here's something to think about. Your English voice doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be yours. I've met learners from Cape Town, from Istanbul, from Buenos Aires, who spoke quietly at first. Soft, unsure, hesitant. But over time, with daily practice, their voices grew louder, stronger, more confident. Not because they studied harder, but because they kept showing up. Day after day, mistake after mistake, word after word. Speaking daily isn't about performance. It's not about impressing anyone. It's about connection. With yourself, with the language, and eventually with other people. It's how you turn all those lessons, videos, and vocabulary lists into something real. Into something alive. Into your voice, speaking English. And once you start doing that, even just for 5 minutes, something shifts inside you. You stop waiting. You start becoming. So yes, the struggle is real, but it's also the doorway to something powerful, and you don't have to do it alone. You're part of a community now, a community of people around the world who understand what it's like to be stuck in silence and who are ready to break through it, one small step at a time, starting today. Let me tell you about someone who reminds me a lot of many of you listening right now. Her name is Sophia, and she's from Madrid. When I first spoke to her, she was shy, quiet, and always a little hesitant to speak English. Not because she didn't know it. She had studied English for over 10 years. She could understand almost everything she read and heard. She loved watching English movies and even followed business podcasts in English for her job. But speaking? That was a completely different story. Every time she needed to say something out loud, especially in front of other people, she would panic. Sophia worked in the marketing department of a global company, which meant she often had to collaborate with colleagues from London, Toronto, and even Singapore. She told me she would avoid meetings where she had to talk. She preferred to send emails instead of joining video calls, and when she couldn't avoid a call, she would write her answers in advance and read them like a script. Her heart would race. Her voice would shake. And every time she finished speaking, she would replay the conversation in her mind, thinking about all the little mistakes she might have made. What stood out to me most was that Sophia wasn't lazy. She wasn't unmotivated. In fact, she was incredibly dedicated. She just didn't believe she could ever feel natural speaking English. She thought, maybe I'm just not the kind of person who speaks confidently. And that's what she believed for a long time, until something changed. It happened after one particularly difficult meeting. A colleague from Dublin had asked her a question and she didn't understand right away. She froze, then she gave a short answer, and after the meeting, she felt embarrassed for hours. That night, she went home and decided she couldn't keep avoiding this. She wanted to grow in her job, and she wanted to feel like herself when speaking English. She knew that something had to change. But what? She didn't have hours to dedicate each day. She had a full-time job, a family, and not a lot of free time. So she asked herself a simple question. What can I do consistently, even if it's just a little bit? That's when she made the decision that changed everything. She would speak English out loud every day for just 5 minutes. No pressure, no perfection, just 5 minutes. That's all. At first, she didn't even speak full sentences. She would walk around her kitchen and name the things she saw. Cup, spoon, coffee, sink, window, tree. Then she started adding simple sentences. I am making coffee. It is sunny today. I feel tired, but it's okay. She didn't worry about mistakes. She didn't care about grammar. She just wanted to get used to hearing her own voice in English. It was strange at first, and she told me it felt silly, but she kept doing it. 5 minutes a day, every day. After a week, she noticed something small. She wasn't afraid of speaking to herself anymore. After 2 weeks, she was speaking in longer sentences, talking about her plans for the day or what happened at work. After a month, she stopped preparing full scripts for meetings. She still wrote notes, but she trusted herself to speak more freely. Her voice became smoother. Her words came faster. And most importantly, she started to believe that she could do this. One of my favorite parts of Sophia's story is how she handled mistakes. She didn't ignore them, but she didn't let them stop her either. If she said something and realized it didn't sound right, she would pause and try again. Not in a harsh way, but gently. Like she was teaching herself with kindness. That made all the difference. Because when you speak with kindness toward yourself, you keep going. Eventually, Sophia decided to join a small conversation group at work. It wasn't mandatory, but it was a place where employees from different countries could meet once a week and chat informally. The old Sophia would have avoided it completely. But this time, she joined. She didn't say much in the first session. Just a few words, but she showed up again the next week. And the next. By the third session, she told a short story about a campaign she had worked on. People asked questions, and she answered them. And she told me something that really stayed with me. She said, "It wasn't perfect, but I wasn't scared. I felt like I could breathe." That's what daily speaking practice can do. It's not about becoming perfect overnight. It's about creating space for your voice to grow. Sophia didn't change her life schedule. She didn't move to another country or spend thousands of euros on courses. She just committed to something small and stuck with it. 5 minutes a day. That was her promise to herself. And from that small promise came a big change. Now, months later, Sophia not only participates in meetings, she leads some of them. She no longer writes full scripts for calls. She trusts herself to speak, even if she has to pause or search for a word. She even made a new friend from Canada who works in a different department, and they have coffee chats once a week, entirely in English. If you're listening right now and thinking, "That's nice, but I'm different," I want you to remember this. Sophia thought the same thing. She thought she wasn't good enough, not confident enough, not the kind of person who could ever feel fluent. And look at her now. She didn't wait for confidence to appear before she started speaking. She started speaking, and the confidence followed. I love telling Sophia's story because it's so real. She didn't have superpowers, she had doubts, she had fears, but she also had something else: consistency. And that, more than anything, is what builds fluency. Not a big moment, not a perfect lesson, but small daily actions that add up over time. If Sophia could do it, speaking quietly to herself in her kitchen every morning before work, you can too. Your journey doesn't have to look the same, but the path is similar. 5 minutes a day. That's where it begins. And what's amazing is that those 5 minutes don't just change your language skills. They change your belief in yourself. You stop thinking, "I can't," and start realizing, "Maybe I can." And that realization is powerful. This story is not about a quick fix. It's about building something real, something sustainable. It's about making space in your day for your English voice, even if it's just a few minutes. And if you do that, like Sophia did, one day you'll look back and realize how far you've come. Not because someone told you what to say, but because you gave yourself permission to say it. When I first started teaching English, one of the most common things I heard from learners was, "I don't have time." And I understand that. Life is full. Between work, family, studies, and all the unexpected things that happen, it can feel impossible to add something new to your routine. But what I've learned, and what I always share, is that consistent, short practice is more powerful than long, occasional study sessions. There's something almost magical about repetition. Not in the sense of doing the exact same thing over and over again like a robot, but in showing up every day, speaking a little, practicing the same structure, hearing yourself say something familiar until it becomes part of you. Let me tell you something important. Fluency isn't built in one weekend. It's built in small, quiet moments, repeated again and again until the language becomes natural. And that's where repetition becomes your best friend. It doesn't ask for perfection. It only asks that you return. I remember a learner from Jakarta who was working as a customer service representative. Her English listening was very good. She could understand customers most of the time. But when she had to respond, especially over the phone, she struggled. Not because she didn't know the words, but because she didn't trust her voice. She said things like, "I know what I want to say, but it's like my mouth won't cooperate." And I told her something simple. Let's work with repetition. We picked a few basic phrases she often used at work. Things like, "Let me check that for you," and "Can you hold on a moment, please?" and "Thank you for your patience." Nothing fancy, just useful. She practiced those same phrases out loud every morning before work. At first, she felt a little awkward, like she was pretending. But within a week, she didn't have to think about those phrases anymore. They came out naturally, even when she was nervous. Why? Because she had said them out loud so many times that they no longer felt foreign. They became hers. That's what repetition does. It turns something that feels uncomfortable into something familiar. And when something feels familiar, it stops being scary. You start to relax. You start to trust yourself. And then, without even realizing it, you begin to speak more freely. People often think they need to learn more and more and more. They chase new vocabulary, new grammar rules, new expressions. But here's the truth. Learning more isn't the same as becoming fluent. Fluency comes from being able to use what you already know smoothly, without panic, without hesitation. And to get there, you need repetition. You need to say things multiple times, not because you're not smart enough, but because that's how your brain learns to speak automatically. Think about a musician practicing scales. They don't play the scale once and move on. They repeat it every day. And not because they don't understand it, but because their fingers need to remember how it feels. Language is the same. Your mouth, your tongue, your breathing, everything needs practice, just like any instrument. And the more you repeat something, the less you think about it. That's fluency. Speaking without thinking too hard. Speaking because it feels natural. I once spoke to a man from Istanbul who practiced introducing himself every single morning. For 30 days straight, he said, "Hi, my name is Amir. I work in IT support. I like reading about new technology. I'm learning English because I want to travel more and talk to people from different cultures." That was it. Just 1 minute each day. The same introduction, over and over. He did it in the mirror, on his balcony, while waiting for the coffee to brew. By day 10, he didn't need to think about it anymore. By day 20, he was changing. The words a little, adding new details. By day 30, he was using the same rhythm and confidence to answer other questions too. He told me, "I didn't just learn to say my introduction. I learned how to speak about myself in a relaxed way." That's the hidden gift of repetition. We often underestimate what small things can do. 5 minutes may not sound like much, but if you repeat the right things during those 5 minutes, it can transform how you speak. It can take something that once felt difficult and turn it into something automatic. I want you to think about the things you say in your native language. Every single day. Good morning. Thank you. How are you? You probably don't remember learning those phrases. You just said them so many times that now they flow without thought. That's the goal with English. To make some phrases, some structures, some questions so familiar that they don't cause stress anymore. And you don't need fancy material. You don't need expensive textbooks. You don't even need perfect grammar. What you need is a small group of useful sentences and the discipline to repeat them. Speak them in the morning. Whisper them while walking. Say them out loud during lunch break. The more you hear yourself say them, the more real they become. Sometimes people ask me, "But won't I get bored saying the same things every day?" And I always say this, repetition doesn't have to be boring. It depends on how you approach it. You can use repetition as a kind of game. You can challenge yourself to say the same thing in a new tone, or while walking faster, or while looking at yourself in the mirror and smiling. You can imagine you're speaking to a friend, to a boss, to a stranger. The words are the same, but the feeling is different. That's how you keep it fresh. Repetition is also about building trust. Trust in your ability to speak. Trust in your voice. Every time you say something out loud and hear it come out clearly, you send a message to yourself. I can do this. And that message, repeated over days and weeks, becomes part of your identity. You stop saying, "I'm bad at speaking English," and start saying, "I'm getting better every day." That's not just mindset. That's practice. That's repetition doing its quiet, powerful work. And here's the best part. Repetition doesn't require perfection. In fact, if you wait until you feel perfect to start repeating something, you'll never begin. You don't have to get it right. You just have to get it going. Say your name. Say what you do. Say what you like. Say it today. Say it tomorrow. Say it again and again until it feels like a second skin. That's how you move from knowing English to speaking it. Not through pressure, not through memorizing thousands of words, but through daily repetition that fits into your real life. So if you have 5 minutes today, use them. Pick one sentence, one simple phrase, Repeat it out loud. Say it 3 times. Then again. Say it while walking. Say it while cooking. Say it while getting ready for bed. And do it again tomorrow. Because less, when done consistently, is always more. I often hear people say they don't have time to practice speaking English. And honestly, I understand. Between work, family, commuting, and everything else life throws at us, the idea of setting aside 30 or 60 minutes a day to speak out loud can feel unrealistic. But what if I told you that you don't need a long period of time? What if you could improve your speaking skills in moments that already exist in your day? That's what I want to show you, how to use the time you already have without changing your schedule to build your fluency. This is what I call micro-practice. Micro-practice means using small moments throughout your day to speak English. Just a few seconds, maybe a minute here and there, but done with purpose. These moments don't require a quiet room, a special app, or a study plan. They only require your voice and your attention. You can practice while brushing your teeth, waiting for the elevator, making coffee, or walking to the bus stop. These little slices of time are often overlooked, but they are perfect for short speaking practice. Let me tell you about a woman named Priya from Mumbai. She worked full-time in a marketing firm and had 2 young children. Her life was full. She didn't have time for extra English lessons or long study sessions. But she wanted to improve her speaking so she could communicate better with her international clients. So we started looking at her routine. Where were the moments she could practice? Priya discovered her best time was while getting dressed in the morning and during her commute. She didn't have privacy, but she had time. So she made a habit of describing what she was doing out loud in English as she got ready. Things like, "I'm putting on my blue shirt," or "I need to find my keys." On the way to work, she would look around and speak to herself quietly, saying things like, "There's a woman walking her dog," or "The sky is cloudy today." It may sound simple, even silly, but these small efforts added up. Over time, she became more comfortable forming sentences quickly and expressing her thoughts without hesitation. That's the secret of micro-practice. You use the time you already have. You don't need to make big changes to your day. You just change the language you use in the moments that are already happening. Instead of thinking in your native language while you wash the dishes, try thinking in English. Say things out loud like, "I'm almost done with these plates," or "Next I'll clean the table." These aren't deep or complex sentences, but they help you stay connected to the language and keep your speaking muscles active. One of my favorite times to do micro-practice is in the shower. It's private, it's quiet, and no one is listening. You can talk freely. Try describing your plans for the day. "Today I have a meeting at 10, or "I want to cook pasta for dinner." If you're not sure what to say, just repeat a few simple phrases that you've been practicing. "I can do this." "I'm learning every day." "Speaking English is getting easier." Say it like you mean it. Make it part of your routine. Let's think about other places you can use micro-practice. Waiting in line at the grocery store? Look around and name what you see in English. Apples, bananas, carrots, milk. You don't need to speak loudly. You can whisper or even mouth the words silently. The point is to stay engaged and to train your brain to reach for English automatically. Standing in an elevator? Take a deep breath and say silently in your head, "I'm going to the 4th floor. I hope the meeting goes well." Walking the dog? Say, "He's excited today. He loves the park." These little moments make a difference. I remember talking to a man named Tomasz from Warsaw. He worked in IT and spent most of his day at a computer. He told me he was too tired at the end of the day to study, but during the day, while waiting for code to compile or during coffee breaks, he started whispering short English phrases to himself. Sometimes it was just one sentence. "The server is down," or "I need to fix the login issue." At first, it felt strange. But after a while, it became a habit. His coworkers didn't notice, and he didn't need any extra time. And when we spoke again weeks later, his speech had improved. He said, "I didn't even realize I was practicing so much. It just became part of my day." That's the beauty of micro-practice. It becomes invisible. It doesn't interrupt your schedule. It blends into your life. And when done with intention, it builds your confidence, your fluency, and your ability to express yourself naturally. One of the most important things about micro-practice is not worrying about mistakes. When you speak out loud to yourself in these small moments, no one is judging you. You're free to try, to experiment, to make errors and correct them. You're creating a safe space for your voice. And that's what most learners need. A place to speak freely, without pressure, without fear. You might think, but is this really enough? And my answer is always yes, if you do it consistently. Just like drops of water can fill a glass, these tiny moments of practice fill your confidence. They create a rhythm of speaking that prepares you for real conversations. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to speak. Another great idea is to use your phone as a tool for micro-practice. When you're waiting for a friend or riding in a taxi, open the voice recorder and speak for 1 minute. Talk about how your day is going or what you plan to do tomorrow. Don't worry about the grammar. Just speak. And if you listen later, you'll notice your progress over time. You'll hear your voice becoming clearer, your ideas coming faster. You can even make it fun. Set a small challenge for yourself. For example, today I will use 3 different verbs while walking to the store. Or, while cooking dinner, I will describe everything I do in English. These games keep your mind active and make learning more enjoyable. Many people imagine that learning to speak English means long hours of serious study. But the truth is, the most effective learning often happens in small, everyday moments. When you repeat a sentence while tying your shoes. When you practice a question in the mirror. When you describe the weather while waiting for the train. These little efforts might seem too small to matter, but they add up. They teach your brain to switch into English without hesitation. So today, I want you to look at your routine and find 5 moments where you can insert just 30 seconds of speaking. Maybe while getting dressed. Maybe during your coffee break. Maybe while you brush your teeth at night. These moments are already part of your day. Use them. Let them be your classroom. You don't need silence. You don't need a perfect environment. You just need a voice and a decision to speak. That's how micro-practice works. Small moments, big changes, one habit at a time. I want to tell you about Rico, an engineer who lives in Tokyo. Rico's story is a powerful example of how we can take something as routine and ordinary as a daily commute and turn it into a tool for transformation. When I first met Rico, he told me he had been learning English for years. He had taken classes in school, studied grammar, and even followed several online courses. But when it came to actually speaking English, he still felt stuck. He said, "I understand a lot, but my words don't come out when I need them. I hesitate, I freeze, and it makes me feel frustrated." Like many people, Rico thought he needed more time. He believed he needed to sit down every evening and study for at least an hour to improve his speaking. But he also had a demanding job, a busy schedule, and very little energy after work. So he did what most people do. He kept postponing his speaking practice, thinking he would find time later. But later never came. That's when we started talking about habits and how small, repeated actions can create big changes. I asked Rico about his daily routine. What did his mornings look like? How long did he spend commuting? As it turned out, Rico took the train every weekday for about 35 minutes each way. At first, he didn't see this as a useful time. It was noisy, crowded, and not exactly relaxing. But it was consistent. It was a block of time he could count on. So we made a plan. Instead of thinking about practicing English in long, perfect sessions, Rico would use his commute as a mini speaking workout. Every morning, he chose 1 or 2 English phrases that he had heard or read the day before. These could come from a podcast, a movie, or even an English article online. He would write them down in his notes app. Then, on the train, with his mask on and headphones in, he would repeat those phrases quietly to himself. He didn't worry about volume. Sometimes he whispered. Sometimes he mouthed the words silently. The goal wasn't to be loud. It was to be consistent. He practiced saying the phrase slowly, then faster. He changed the intonation. He played with the rhythm. He imagined different situations where he might use it and then created short responses or follow-up questions. If the phrase was, "Can I ask you something?" he would imagine asking it to a colleague, a teacher, or a friend. Then he'd follow it with imaginary answers. "Sure, go ahead." "Actually, I'm in a rush right now." "Of course, what's up?" This routine started small, just 2 or 3 minutes at a time. But something interesting happened. After a couple of weeks, Rico told me that those phrases started to come to him naturally during meetings at work. Instead of translating in his head or hesitating, he noticed that the same expressions he had practiced were now popping into his mind without effort. His speaking became more fluid, less mechanical. He didn't feel stuck anymore when trying to participate in conversations. He also said something that stayed with me. "It's like my brain already knew what to say before I thought about it. And that only happened because I had said it so many times before." That's the magic of repetition combined with context. He wasn't just memorizing phrases. He was using them, repeating them, adapting them, and making them part of his mental library. Another thing Rico did that made a big difference was reviewing his phrases at night, just for a minute or two before bed. He didn't open a textbook or write essays. He simply repeated the same sentences again, maybe added one new example, and visualized himself using them the next day. This mental rehearsal reinforced what he practiced in the morning. It created a cycle of input and output day after day. What I love about Rico's story is how practical and doable it is. He didn't need special tools. He didn't need extra time. He used what he already had, his commute, and turned it into a space for growth. He didn't expect perfection. He focused on familiarity and consistency. And that's what made all the difference. Rico also told me that practicing on the train helped reduce his fear of speaking in front of others. Because he was repeating sentences in a public space, even quietly, it helped him become less self-conscious. He said, "At first I was afraid people would think I was strange. But then I realized no one was paying attention. Everyone was on their phones or asleep. So I stopped worrying. And when I stopped worrying, I started enjoying it." Over time, he expanded his practice. On some days, he used English language podcasts or YouTube videos with subtitles. He would listen to a short clip, pause it, and repeat what he heard. Sometimes he mimicked the tone and rhythm of the speaker, just like shadowing. It made his speech sound more natural. And when he encountered a new phrase, he added it to his note for the next day. It became a cycle of listening, repeating, and building confidence. By the 3rd month, Rico noticed he could hold short conversations at work without overthinking. His sentences came faster. He used more idiomatic expressions. He felt less pressure to be perfect and more focused on connecting with others. When he met clients from abroad, he didn't feel nervous. He said, "Before I tried to remember the right grammar. Now I just talk." What changed wasn't his grammar or vocabulary alone. It was his habit. His choice to use a consistent moment in his day, every day, to speak out loud. That's the real lesson here. You don't need hours. You don't need silence. You need commitment to the small windows of time that are already there. Like Rico, you can choose a moment that repeats in your life and fill it with English. Even if it's just a few minutes. Even if it's just one phrase at a time. Rico's journey shows us that fluency isn't built in a single session. It's built in repetition. It's built in courage. And most of all, it's built in the quiet, personal decision to speak when no one is listening. That's the kind of practice that leads to real progress. Let's talk about one of my favorite techniques for improving spoken English, the shadowing technique. If you've never heard of it before, don't worry. I'm going to walk you through it in a simple and practical way. Shadowing is all about listening to English and repeating what you hear, almost like you're echoing the speaker. It's not about translating. It's not about understanding every single word. It's about mimicking. It's about rhythm, tone, and flow. You're training your brain and your mouth to move together in English. When I first started using shadowing with my students, many of them were unsure. They thought they needed to understand every word before they could repeat. But that's not true. The beauty of shadowing is that it works even when your understanding is limited. In fact, it helps build your understanding. Think of how babies learn to speak. They hear sounds, they repeat them, and little by little those sounds start to make sense. Shadowing follows that same natural path. The key is not to worry about mistakes. Shadowing is not about being perfect. It's about getting your mouth used to the patterns of English. When you hear native speakers, they speak with a certain rhythm and stress. Some words are fast, some are slow, some syllables go up, and others fall. If you only read English, you might miss these patterns. But when you shadow, you feel them. You experience how English really sounds in daily life. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine you hear the sentence, "What do you want to do today?" If you read it, you might think each word should be pronounced clearly and separately. But when a native speaker says it, it might sound more like, "What do you want to do today?" There's a flow. The words connect. That's what shadowing helps you learn. Not just the words, but how they live in real conversation. To get started, you only need a short audio clip. It can be a podcast, a video, or even a short scene from a movie. Choose something with clear speech. At first, don't worry about understanding every sentence. Just listen. Then play a small part, maybe 3 to 5 seconds, and try to repeat exactly what you hear. Not just the words, but the way the speaker says them. Try to match the tone, the speed, the pauses. In the beginning, this might feel strange. You might feel slow or unsure. That's normal. It's like learning a song by ear. The first time you try, you might miss a few notes. But the more you do it, the more accurate and confident you become. Your muscles start to remember. Your ears become sharper. And slowly, your speaking becomes smoother and more natural. 1. Of the best things about shadowing is that it doesn't take a lot of time. You can practice for 5 or 10 minutes a day. You don't need a teacher or a classroom. You just need your voice and something to listen to. Many learners do it while walking, cleaning, or getting ready in the morning. It's flexible and easy to add into your daily routine. Another tip I like to give is to focus on content that you enjoy. If you love movies, use movie clips. If you like interviews or TED Talks, use those. When the topic is interesting to you, your brain pays more attention, and that means your learning will be faster and more effective. Let's talk about how to break down a clip. Say you find a short video that's 2 minutes long. Don't try to shadow the whole thing at once. Start with 1 or 2 sentences. Play them, pause, repeat. Go back and try again. Do it slowly at first, then try it faster. You might do this 10 times, and that's okay. Repetition is your friend. The more you hear and repeat, the more confident you'll feel. Some people like to write the sentences down after shadowing. This can help you see how the words connect and where contractions happen. But it's not necessary. The most important part is speaking and listening. Shadowing is not a writing exercise. It's a speaking habit. One challenge some learners face is feeling embarrassed when they practice shadowing, especially if they live with others or feel shy. My advice is simple. Find a quiet space, and remind yourself that no one is judging you. You're training just like an athlete trains for a sport. You're building your fluency step by step. You wouldn't laugh at someone lifting weights or running laps. So don't laugh at yourself for practicing speech. Be proud of it. You can also record yourself. Many learners find it helpful to listen to their own voice and compare it to the original speaker. It's a great way to catch where your intonation or pronunciation might be different. Don't be too critical, but use it as a guide to improve. Over time, you'll hear progress, and that's incredibly motivating. Some people ask me, how do I know I'm doing it right if I don't understand every word? That's a great question. The answer is focus on the sound. You don't need to know the meaning of every single word right away. Understanding will grow with time. Your brain starts to connect the sounds to meanings as you hear them more often. This is how native speakers learn their own language. It's how you learned your first language. Shadowing brings back that natural process. As you get more comfortable, you can increase the difficulty. Start with slow speech, then try something a bit faster. Try different accents. British English, American English, Australian English, they all have unique sounds. The more variety you expose yourself to, the more adaptable your speaking becomes. Shadowing helps you train for real-world conversations where people speak in many different ways. Another way to level up your shadowing is to do what I call silent shadowing. That means you mouth the words without speaking out loud. This is useful if you're in a public place or can't speak freely. It still trains your mouth and your brain. And it's great for reinforcing the sounds you've already practiced. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to sound exactly like the speaker. You just need to try. The more you try, the better your muscle memory becomes. Your tongue, lips, and jaw get used to the movements of English. This leads to better pronunciation, better flow, and more confidence. So remember this, shadowing is not about performance. It's about practice. It's about building a bridge between listening and speaking. It helps you move from knowing the words to actually saying them, smoothly and naturally. If you make it part of your routine, even just a few minutes a day, you'll see the difference. One of the most powerful changes you can make in your English learning routine is this. Start speaking out loud every single day. I know that sounds simple. I know it might even sound obvious, but most learners skip it. They read, they listen, they think in English, but they don't speak. And that's exactly where the biggest transformation happens, when you use your voice. When you actually speak the words, not just silently in your head, but out loud where your mouth has to shape them, where your breath has to push through the sounds, and your brain has to coordinate everything in real time. Let me tell you something important. Speaking out loud activates different parts of your brain than silent thinking does. When you speak, your brain engages in a full conversation with your body. Your mouth, your tongue, your throat, your ears, they're all involved. This is why speaking out loud is not just a review of what you already know, it's a workout. It builds new connections, it strengthens old ones, it creates fluency through experience. You are not just practicing English, you are becoming someone who uses English. Many learners feel embarrassed to speak out loud when they are alone. I've heard it 1,000 times. They say, Julia, I feel silly, I sound weird, what if someone hears me? And to that, I always say, sounding weird is part of the process. You're not weird. You're learning. Think about how children learn to speak. They repeat things again and again. They say words wrong. They try different sounds. And no one laughs because everyone knows they're growing. You deserve the same space to grow. Let's be honest. If you wait until you feel confident to speak, you might be waiting forever. Confidence doesn't come first. Practice comes first. Confidence follows. So when you speak out loud, even when you feel nervous, you are building a bridge to that future version of yourself, the one who speaks English with ease. You're not just saying words. You're proving to yourself that you can. Some learners tell me they speak in their minds all the time. They think in English while reading, while watching videos, even while going through their daily routine. That's great. It's an important step. But thinking is not speaking. Thinking gives you ideas. Speaking gives you power. When you speak out loud, you take your thoughts and give them form. You make mistakes. You hear yourself. You adjust. You learn faster. You grow faster. Let me give you a simple challenge. Pick one sentence you use every day in your native language. Maybe it's something like, I need to go to the store, or I'm going to make some coffee. Now say that sentence out loud in English. Not in your head. Out loud. Do it while you're getting ready, while brushing your teeth, while cooking dinner. At first, it might feel unnatural, but after a few days, it becomes part of your rhythm. Your brain starts expecting English. Your mouth gets used to the movement. That's how habits are built. Through repetition, through action, through sound. You wait. Don't need a perfect accent. You don't need complex vocabulary. You just need your voice. The more you use it, the more natural English becomes. And here's something you might not expect. When you speak out loud often, your listening also improves. Why? Because you start noticing how things sound. You become more sensitive to pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation. Speaking sharpens your ears. I once worked with a student named Lydia from Warsaw. She understood English really well. Her grammar was solid. Her vocabulary was advanced. But when she had to speak, she froze. Not because she didn't know what to say, but because she wasn't used to saying it out loud. We started a simple daily routine. 5 minutes of speaking to herself every morning, out loud, describing her day, talking about her plans, saying how she felt. After 2 weeks, she told me she was no longer afraid of her voice. After a month, she could hold a conversation without the fear taking over. And it all started with speaking in an empty room. I know it's tempting to wait for the right moment, to wait until you have a partner to practice with, or until your grammar improves, or until you find the perfect app. But the truth is, your best practice partner is your own voice. You can start today, right now. You can describe what you see around you. Talk about what you did yesterday. Say your thoughts out loud. No pressure, no grammar police, no exams. Just your words, your rhythm, your learning. The more you speak out loud, the more automatic English becomes. That's what fluency really is. Automation, not perfection. Not knowing every word, just being able to speak without stopping to think about every little rule. That comes from doing, not just studying. And speaking out loud every day, even for a few minutes, is the fastest way to get there. So don't be afraid of sounding strange. Don't be afraid of your voice. That voice is your tool. It's your strength. It's how you take what you've learned and make it real. You're not just repeating phrases. You're training your brain to think and speak at the same time. You're practicing real communication, the kind you'll use in a conversation, in a meeting, at a job interview, or while traveling. There are no perfect conditions. You might live in a busy house. You might not have much privacy. But even whispering counts. Even speaking softly while walking to work or while washing dishes. The important thing is the sound, the movement, the practice. You don't need a microphone or a recording studio. You need a moment, a sentence, a decision. Think about how often we speak in our native language without planning. We talk to ourselves, we react, we express feelings. Try that in English. React out loud. Say, I'm tired today, or that was a good meal. These are the seeds of fluency. These tiny moments become your voice in English. So take a deep breath and try. Today. Speak one sentence out loud. Don't wait for someone to give you permission. This is your journey. You're the one who decides how fast you move. And if you speak out loud regularly, you will move faster than you ever thought possible. Let me tell you the story of Daniel. a young man from Nairobi, Kenya, who, like many of you, struggled with speaking English. Daniel was highly motivated to improve his English, especially because he needed to communicate with international clients for his job. He understood English well and could read and write without any issues, but when it came time to speak, he froze. His fear of making mistakes in front of others held him back, and that's a situation I know many of you can relate to. For months, Daniel avoided speaking in English. He relied on written communication and emails, which, in his mind, were safer. But he quickly realized that this wasn't enough for his professional growth. He wanted to contribute more confidently in meetings and interact more naturally with his colleagues. Daniel knew he needed to take the next step, but he was paralyzed by the thought of speaking out loud and being judged for his mistakes. Then, one day, he decided to try something new. Instead of worrying about how others would perceive him, he chose to focus on himself and his own improvement. He committed to recording short audio messages in English every day, speaking on different topics, anything from describing his day to giving his opinion on a book he was reading or even explaining what he had for lunch. It wasn't much, just a few minutes each day, but it was a start. The key was that he was speaking regularly and in a way that was low pressure. At first, Daniel didn't like the sound of his own voice. He thought he sounded strange. His accent wasn't perfect, and he found himself stumbling over words. But instead of getting discouraged, he kept going. He made it a daily habit. In the beginning, it was difficult, but something happened after just a few weeks. Daniel began to hear progress when he listened back to his recordings. His speech was smoother. His accent wasn't as heavy. He was more comfortable expressing himself in English. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Hearing his own improvement motivated him even more. He could see and hear how much he was progressing, and that gave him the courage to push himself even further. Daniel realized that it wasn't about being flawless. It was about growth. And hearing his own voice evolve helped him understand that mistakes were part of the process. They were not something to fear, but rather something to embrace. After a couple of months, Daniel felt confident enough to take the next step. He started participating in meetings in English. At first, he hesitated, but he reminded himself that his speaking practice was helping him, even in these real-world situations. He wasn't perfect, but he was communicating. He wasn't as nervous as he had been before. Slowly, he started contributing more during these meetings, asking questions, offering suggestions, and even leading parts of the discussions. His colleagues noticed the change. They could tell that he was more confident and more fluent, but it wasn't just about the meetings at work. Daniel also found himself speaking up more in social situations. Whether it was during a conversation with a friend or while shopping, he was no longer afraid to speak. He felt more comfortable using English as part of his daily life. His new habit of recording audio messages became a part of his routine, and it carried over into everything he did. Daniel had moved past his fear. What's amazing about Daniel's story is how small actions, just a few minutes of speaking practice every day, can lead to such big results. You don't need hours of practice or perfect conditions to improve. What Daniel did, and what I encourage all of you to do, is make speaking a habit. Just like Daniel, you don't have to worry about making mistakes. You don't need to sound like a native speaker. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Daniel's story also shows how valuable it is to listen to yourself. When you record your voice, you get the opportunity to hear your own evolution. It's a powerful tool. You may not notice the changes day by day, but when you listen to those first recordings and compare them to where you are now, you'll be amazed at how far you've come. And here's the thing. Just like Daniel, you can use your own recordings to boost your confidence. You can listen to them at any time, even when you're feeling unsure. They become a personal reminder of your progress and a source of motivation. It's like having your own proof that you are moving forward, even when you don't feel like it. It's not always easy, I know. Sometimes it feels like the fear will never go away. But Daniel's story proves that it can. If you start with small, manageable steps, like recording a sentence or a short story every day, you'll start building a foundation of confidence. It won't happen overnight, but every day that you commit to speaking will bring you closer to where you want to be. And remember, everyone feels the way Daniel did. We've all been there, afraid to speak, worried about making mistakes, worried about being judged. But once you start, you realize that the fear is just an obstacle. The more you push past it, the easier it becomes. Mistakes? They're just stepping stones. They're part of the learning process. In fact, they're probably the most important part, because without mistakes, there's no progress. I want you to think about your own journey now. If you're feeling stuck, like Daniel was, take a moment and ask yourself, what small step can I take today? It could be recording yourself for just 2 minutes, or speaking a sentence out loud when you're walking to the store, or listening to an English podcast and repeating what you hear. The goal is to create that habit of speaking, to make it a part of your daily routine. Because that's how you break through the fear, how you move past the hesitation, and how you become a more confident English speaker, just like Daniel did. And just like you will. Now, you might be wondering, what if I don't feel like I'm ready for real conversations? I hear you. It can feel like a big step to go from speaking alone to speaking with someone else. But think about it this way. This is an opportunity to practice in a real, practical context. Real conversations help you improve in ways that solo practice just can't. You get immediate feedback. Maybe your speaking partner will help you with a word you don't know, or maybe they'll correct your grammar gently. This kind of feedback is invaluable, and the best part? It's a two-way street. You're helping them, and they're helping you. It's a cooperative learning experience, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's the beauty of it. If you're worried about making mistakes, just remember, every mistake you make is an opportunity to learn. The more mistakes you make in a supportive environment, the more you'll improve. You'll start to realize that mistakes aren't something to fear. They're just part of the process. Your speaking partner won't judge you, and in fact, they'll probably make mistakes too. That's what language learning is all about. Learning together. If you're still feeling unsure about having conversations with others, consider practicing with someone who is also at a similar level as you. You can start by talking about simple topics, what you did that day, your favorite food, or the weather. These topics don't require a lot of complex vocabulary, but they give you a chance to get used to speaking with someone else. You can take turns asking each other questions and answering them. It will start to feel more like a natural exchange, and the pressure will begin to fade. Even if you're just speaking for 10 minutes once a week, that time will add up over the months, and you'll start to see significant progress. Think of it like this. If you practice with someone for just 10 minutes each week, that's 520 minutes in a year. That's almost 9 full hours of conversation practice. Imagine how much more fluent you'll feel after that. And that's just one conversation per week. If you find more partners or practice more frequently, those hours will only increase. Another thing to keep in mind is that your speaking partner doesn't need to be a professional teacher or even a native speaker. The goal is communication, and sometimes it's easier to practice with someone who's also learning. You can relate to each other's struggles and help each other out. If you find someone who speaks English fluently, great. But if not, that's okay too. The most important thing is that you're both helping each other practice. I encourage you to find a speaking partner. It doesn't have to be intimidating. Even if you start with just one conversation a week, that's a big step forward. The more you engage in real conversations, the more you'll feel comfortable with the language. So, start thinking about who you can talk to, whether it's a friend, a colleague, or someone you meet online. Don't let the fear of making mistakes hold you back. The more you speak, the more you'll grow. And that's what we're here for: growth, confidence, and progress in your English-speaking journey. Let me tell you about Lara. Lara is an architect living in Berlin, and like many of you, she had been practicing her English on her own for quite a while. She'd listen to podcasts, watch movies in English, and read books. But despite all of this, she felt something was missing. She had gotten to a point where she could understand a lot of English, but when it came to speaking, she still felt unsure. She often found herself avoiding conversations with English-speaking colleagues or friends, worried that she wouldn't be able to express herself clearly or make mistakes. She needed more real-world practice, but didn't know where to start. That's when Lara decided to take a leap and join an online language exchange group. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she was willing to give it a try. In this group, language learners from all over the world connect with each other, looking for speaking partners to practice their target languages. Lara wasn't looking for a perfect match. She didn't need someone who spoke English perfectly. She just needed someone to practice with, someone who was also learning and who could help her become more comfortable speaking out loud. One day, she connected with Arti, a woman from India who was learning German. They both wanted to improve their conversational skills, so they agreed to meet once a week for a video call. Their first conversation was a bit awkward, like many first conversations are. They both had to get used to speaking to each other in English, and at times they stumbled over words or struggled to find the right vocabulary. But the amazing thing was that they both understood the challenges of learning a new language. They were patient with each other, and over time they started to feel more comfortable. At first, they focused on simple topics, things like what they did during the week, what they liked to do in their free time, and the differences between their countries. Arti would talk about life in India, and Lara would share insights into life in Germany. As the weeks went by, they began to dive into more complex conversations. They discussed architecture, culture, food, and even politics. With each call, Lara noticed that her ability to express herself in English was improving. She started to think more quickly in English, and the sentences came out more naturally. It was no longer about translating from German to English in her head. She was starting to speak directly in English. And this, as we know, is the key to fluency. The best part was that Lara didn't have to travel anywhere to make this connection. She simply used her computer and found a partner who lived on the other side of the world. The beauty of the internet and technology today is that language exchange doesn't have to be limited by geography. Lara and Arti were able to build a connection despite living in completely different parts of the world. And not only did they practice their English and German, but they also built a friendship. They became each other's language buddies, always looking forward to their weekly sessions. Lara's story is a perfect example of how creating connections through language can open up new doors. When we think about learning a language, we often focus on grammar rules and vocabulary. And while those are important, real language learning happens when you communicate with someone else. Having a speaking partner, even if it's just once a week, can make a world of difference. And it doesn't matter where in the world that person is. I know many of you might be thinking that it sounds great, but maybe you don't have time or you're unsure about how to find a partner. But I want to encourage you to think about this. Lara didn't have to find a professional language teacher. She didn't have to wait for the perfect situation, and she didn't have to live in an English-speaking country. She simply took action and found a way to make language practice a part of her routine. And you can do the same thing. There are so many language exchange websites, apps, and even Facebook groups that connect people from all around the world. You don't need to wait for the perfect time or the perfect person. You just need to start. And it's not about finding someone who's perfect at English. It's about finding someone who is willing to practice with you. Someone who shares the same goal of improving their language skills. Remember, this isn't about perfection. It's about communication, connection, and progress. You'll both make mistakes, but that's completely okay. Mistakes are part of the process, and they're what help us grow. Lara's experience is a great reminder that language learning doesn't have to be isolating. It doesn't have to be something you do alone. By finding someone who is also on the same journey, you can help each other along the way. You'll motivate each other to keep going even when it feels hard, and you'll celebrate each other's progress. It's the kind of support that makes the learning process not just more effective, but also more enjoyable. As Lara and Artie's relationship grew, they started to talk not just about language, but about culture, about the things that made their countries unique, and about the similarities they shared despite living so far apart. They both gained so much from their conversations, not just language skills, but also a deeper understanding of each other's lives and experiences. Language is a bridge, and by finding a partner to speak with, you're not just learning vocabulary or grammar. You're learning to connect with people from different backgrounds, and that's one of the most beautiful parts of language learning. So if you're struggling to find the motivation or the right way to practice, take a page from Lara's book. Reach out, find someone to practice with, and start making connections. It might feel uncomfortable at first, but the more you do it, the easier it will become. And just like Lara and Artie, you might find that you're not just improving your language skills, you're also building meaningful connections that can last a lifetime. Remember, it doesn't matter where you are or where your partner is. The important thing is to make speaking a regular part of your routine, even if it's just once a week. So, start looking for your language buddy today, and who knows? Your journey to fluency could lead to a friendship that lasts far beyond language practice. One of the easiest yet most powerful ways to practice your speaking skills is by talking to yourself. Yes, you heard me right. Self-talk. It might sound a bit odd at first, but let me tell you, it's an incredibly effective tool to help you improve your fluency and confidence in English. I want to take a moment to walk you through how this practice can become a game changer in your language learning journey. Now, I know some of you may feel a bit uncomfortable with the idea of speaking out loud when there's no one around to listen. You might think, why should I talk to myself? Isn't that just weird? But here's the thing. Talking to yourself is actually one of the best ways to turn English into a natural part of your thinking process. It helps bridge the gap between passive knowledge, the English you understand when you read or listen, and active usage, the English you speak or write. And I'm here to tell you, it works. So, how exactly does this work? First off, let's talk about the power of narration. You can start by narrating your actions. Picture yourself getting ready. In the morning, you're brushing your teeth, making your bed, or preparing breakfast. As you go through your day, simply narrate what you're doing in English. You don't have to go into great detail. Just describe what's happening in a simple, straightforward way. For example, I'm brushing my teeth now. I need to wash my face next. I think I'll have cereal for breakfast. This might seem small, but it's incredibly impactful. When you're narrating your actions in English, you're giving your brain the chance to process and produce the language in a more active way. The more you do this, the more comfortable you become with expressing yourself in English, even when you're not talking to someone else. Over time, this will help you think in English more naturally and reduce the tendency to translate from your native language. Another great way to practice is by reflecting on your day in English. At the end of the day, take a few minutes to think about what happened during your day, and instead of doing it in your native language, do it in English. You can reflect out loud or simply think in English. Either way, you're reinforcing your language skills. For example, you might think, today was a busy day. I had a meeting in the morning and I had to give a presentation. It was challenging, but I did well. After work, I went to the gym and now I'm relaxing at home. By doing this, you're not just practicing vocabulary and sentence structures, you're also strengthening your ability to form thoughts and ideas directly in English. It's almost like giving yourself a mini English conversation, but without the pressure of a conversation partner. And guess what? You don't need anyone else to validate what you're doing. The practice itself is the key. This can be done at any time during the day, while you're walking, cooking, cleaning, or even sitting in traffic. It's a simple yet powerful practice that doesn't require any extra time or effort. Let's be honest. Sometimes we don't always have the time or opportunity to have long conversations in English, especially if we don't have a speaking partner. And that's okay. The beauty of self-talk is that it fits seamlessly into your daily routine. You can do it anywhere, at any time, and for as long as you want. It's completely flexible, and the best part is that it's free. You don't need to spend money on classes, apps, or materials. You already have everything you need. You just need to start talking. The more you talk to yourself in English, the easier it becomes to think in English. Over time, your brain starts to associate English with your daily life. You'll find that you begin to think of solutions or answers in English without consciously having to translate them from your native language. The goal isn't perfection. It's about integrating English into your daily thought process, making it a natural part of your life. You can even take it a step further and try having internal conversations with yourself. For example, when you're planning your day or thinking through a problem, try doing it in English. Ask yourself questions like, what should I do first? Or, how do I solve this? Answer yourself in English. It doesn't have to be complex. It's more about creating that mental habit of thinking in English. The more you do it, the easier it becomes to speak English fluently when the time comes. I understand that many of you might feel uncomfortable at first. It's not easy to speak aloud, especially when you're alone. But trust me, the more you practice self-talk, the more natural it becomes. And the more natural it becomes, the less nervous you'll feel when you do have the opportunity to speak with someone else. The key is to start small and build up. It doesn't matter if you make mistakes. It doesn't matter if you don't say everything perfectly. What matters is that you're getting more comfortable with the language. You're becoming more confident in your ability to use English every day. I want you to think of self-talk as a tool for building your fluency. It's something you can use every day without needing a lot of extra time or resources. The best part? You can do it at your own pace and it doesn't have to be stressful. It's just you practicing English in a way that works for you. Remember, language learning isn't just about the big moments when you're speaking to someone else or doing a test. It's about the small, consistent moments throughout your day. And self-talk gives you the chance to make every moment a potential practice session. By narrating your actions, reflecting on your day, or even having internal conversations, you're constantly keeping your English active. The more you do this, the more you'll see progress, even in the areas that might feel a bit challenging at first. So, give it a try. Start speaking to yourself in English today, and notice how it begins to change the way you think and speak. It's a simple practice, but over time, it can have a profound impact on your fluency and confidence. I want to take a moment to talk about something that is absolutely crucial for your language learning journey: being kind to yourself. I know many of you are probably familiar with the feeling of frustration when you make a mistake in English. Maybe you say something incorrectly, or you can't find the right word, or you stumble over a sentence. And in that moment, it can feel like you've failed, like you're not making progress. But I want to remind you that mistakes are not failures. Mistakes are progress. One of the most important things to remember on this journey is that language learning is a process. It's a long-term journey, not a sprint. It takes time, effort, and yes, making mistakes along the way. And that's completely okay. In fact, it's necessary. When you make mistakes, you are learning. Your brain is figuring out how to use the language more effectively. It's all part of the process. But the key here is to be kind to yourself when those mistakes happen and not let them discourage you. We live in a world where perfection is often emphasized. We're taught that if something isn't done perfectly, it's not good enough. But when it comes to language learning, perfection is not the goal. Communication is the goal. And communication doesn't require perfection. It requires clarity, confidence, and practice. If you focus on trying to sound perfect all the time, you'll likely end up feeling more anxious. And that anxiety will actually make it harder for you to speak. It's a vicious cycle that keeps you from making real progress. I want to encourage you to adopt a different mindset. Instead of aiming for perfection, aim for progress. When you make a mistake, instead of getting frustrated with yourself, take a moment to recognize that it's part of your progress. You're pushing yourself to improve, and that's something to be proud of. Every time you make a mistake and then correct it, you're learning and moving closer to your goal. The more mistakes you make, the more opportunities you have to learn. This shift in mindset is so powerful because it removes the pressure you might feel to be perfect and allows you to relax and enjoy the process. When you remove the fear of making mistakes, you become more open to taking risks in your speaking. You start to speak more freely without second-guessing every word or sentence you say. And guess what? That's when real fluency begins to develop. Fluency doesn't come from avoiding mistakes. It comes from embracing them and learning from them. You might be thinking, but Julia, I'm still embarrassed when I make mistakes in front of other people. What if they think I'm not good enough? Trust me, I understand that feeling. It's tough to speak in front of others when you're worried about making a mistake. But here's the thing. People are far more understanding and patient than we often give them credit for. Most people aren't paying as much attention to your mistakes as you think they are. And even if they do notice, they're likely impressed that you're trying at all. You're speaking a second language. How amazing is that? In fact, most people appreciate when you make the effort to communicate, even if your language isn't perfect. They understand that learning a language takes time, and they'll respect your effort. So why not give yourself the same grace that others would give you? Why not allow yourself the space to make mistakes without beating yourself up? This approach will reduce anxiety and make it easier for you to speak more confidently, knowing that mistakes aren't something to fear, but something to learn from. It's also important to recognize that perfection doesn't even exist when it comes to language. No one speaks perfectly, not even native speakers. We all make mistakes, mispronounce words, and struggle to find the right word sometimes. But the difference is, native speakers don't let those mistakes stop them from speaking. They keep going. And that's what you can do too. Mistakes are just stepping stones on your path to fluency. One thing that helps is reminding yourself that practice is what makes progress. Every time you speak, whether you make mistakes or not, you are practicing. And practice is what leads to improvement. It's easy to get discouraged when you don't see immediate results, but fluency takes time. It's like learning to ride a bike. At first, you might fall over a lot, but the more you practice, the better you get at balancing. Eventually, you're riding without even thinking about it. The same goes for speaking English. You might stumble at first, but the more you practice, the smoother it will become. So, what I want to emphasize here is that your goal should be consistent practice, not perfection. Try to speak every day, even if it's just for 5 minutes. And don't worry if it's not perfect. What matters is that you're getting better, step by step. If you make a mistake, don't be hard on yourself. Instead, focus on what you learned from it and how you can use that knowledge next time. Being kind to yourself also means recognizing the progress you've made. You're learning a language, and that in itself is a huge achievement. Think about where you were when you first started learning English. Look at how far you've come since then. You've probably learned a lot more than you realize, and it's important to acknowledge that. Celebrate your victories, no matter how small they may seem. Each new word you learn, each sentence you speak more confidently, is progress. Remember, learning a language isn't about reaching some perfect standard. It's about communication, and communication is messy. It's about expressing yourself, making connections, and sharing ideas. So instead of focusing on getting everything right, focus on getting your message across. That's what matters most. Be kind to yourself. Embrace the mistakes, enjoy the journey. And know that with each mistake, you are one step closer to fluency. As we come to the end of today's episode, I just want to take a moment to quickly recap everything we've talked about, so it really sticks with you. First, we talked about how so many of us understand English but struggle to speak it confidently. We explored how the real barrier often comes from not practicing enough and the fear of making mistakes. But here's the thing. Making mistakes is part of the process, and it's essential for improvement. You'll never be able to get better at speaking unless you start speaking. And guess what? It doesn't have to be perfect. Perfection is not the goal. Communication is. Then we discussed the power of repetition. Speaking every day, even if just for a few minutes, helps your brain become more familiar with the language, which in turn makes it easier to speak naturally. It's not about long hours of study. It's about consistent, focused practice, even in small chunks of time. Whether you're walking to work or getting ready in the morning, those small moments can have a big impact. You don't need extra time in your day. You just need to incorporate those practice moments into your routine. We also looked at some real-life examples, like Sofia from Madrid and Rico from Tokyo, who have used small daily habits to improve their speaking skills. Their stories show that you don't need to wait for the perfect moment or an ideal situation to practice. If they can find the time, so can you. And it's the consistency that makes all the difference in the long run. We talked about the shadowing technique, which is such a simple but powerful way to improve your speaking. By listening to English and repeating it out loud, you start to mimic the rhythm and intonation of native speakers, which will help you sound more natural and fluid. Don't worry if you don't understand every word at first. That comes later. The key is to start, listen, and repeat. Next, we highlighted how speaking out loud activates different areas of your brain compared to just thinking in English. This helps reinforce what you've learned and makes speaking feel more natural. I encouraged you to get past the fear of sounding strange. We all feel that way at first, but you'll be amazed at how much progress you'll make once you turn speaking into a habit. Then, we saw how Daniel from Nairobi overcame his fear by recording short audio messages every day. Hearing his own progress motivated him to speak more confidently in meetings. This is another example of how small, consistent efforts lead to big results. And remember, you don't have to do it perfectly. Just speak. I also introduced the 5-minute talk challenge, which is all about pushing yourself to speak for 5 minutes, every day on any topic. No edits, no stopping. It's just about speaking freely and allowing yourself to be imperfect. This is a great exercise to get used to thinking and speaking in real time, without overthinking or stressing about mistakes. Finding a speaking partner, even if it's just once a week, is another great way to practice. Conversations with others give you the opportunity to use the language in real-life situations, helping you develop conversational skills. Whether it's a friend, a colleague, or someone from an online language exchange group, connecting with others can make all the difference. Lara's story from Berlin showed how finding a language buddy online can be incredibly effective. She found someone from India to practice with every week, and their consistent conversations helped her improve quickly. This is another example of how connecting with others can give you real, valuable practice that you can't get just from studying on your own. We also discussed the power of self-talk. Narrating your actions or reflecting on your day in English, even when you're alone, can make a huge difference in how much you use the language. It's simple, it's free, and it's something you can do at any time. By making English a part of your daily thinking, it becomes more natural, and the more natural it feels, the more fluent you become. And of course, we emphasize the importance of being kind to yourself. You don't need to be perfect. Mistakes are a part of the journey, and they're necessary for growth. The more you practice, the better you'll get. The goal is not perfection, the goal is progress. Every mistake you make is an opportunity to learn and get better. So, with all of this in mind, I want to leave you with a few final thoughts. First, practice every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. You don't have to study for hours on end to see progress. Consistent, short bursts of practice are incredibly effective. And don't forget to be kind to yourself along the way. Language learning is a journey, and it's okay to stumble along the way. Keep going, keep practicing, and remember, every step forward is a step toward fluency. Now, before I let you go, I have a little favor to ask. If today's episode was helpful for you, I'd love for you to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this episode with a friend who's also looking to improve their English. The more people we can reach, the bigger our community of learners becomes. And that's exactly what we're here for. Finally, I want to leave you with a little encouragement. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to speak every day. Keep practicing, and I promise you, you'll see progress.